It's often stated that Sony really has a thing against 2D games, and they happen to be my favorite ones. I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today I show you 5 great 2D games for the PlayStation 1.
Second Opinion Games.
Coming out early in the PlayStation 1's life is Skeleton Warriors. Now, this is a action hack and slash where you kill rats, bats, and skeletons alike. Now, when the skeletons die, they leave behind a little bit of their essence. Sometimes they leave extra health for you, which happens quite a bit, and occasionally they'll leave a little projectile weapon that you could use at any time, most likely to kill more skeletons. But if you don't pick up their essence, well, then they'll reform and you have to kill them all over again. Occasionally you do come to spots in the game where you just constantly have to kill the enemies in order to proceed, like common in most beat-em-up games like Double Dragon. Kind of set the standard for this, and now that's what we're stuck with. Now, to break up the monotony, there's some hover bike levels that look really cool for the early PlayStation 1, but don't really hold up super well today. However, they're over relatively quick, and they don't really bring the game down at all. They just sort of add to it, which is, I guess, what they're going for. There's lots of different environments and stages, and your sword is very useful. It could attack straight forward, or up in the air, or you could be bouncing on enemies like Scrooge McDuck with a pogo stick with your sword, and that's pretty impressive. You even have a block button that's very useful against some of the bosses in this game because they can move really quick and really take a ton of energy away from you rather fast. And if you happen to beat them, you'll be treated to an early CGI cutscene where it just doesn't hold up very well, but I laugh at these every single time. It's not all good though with this game. There's a momentum mechanic. Sometimes there's hills and your character just can't run fast enough up them, and it's very strange that this is even in here. But overall, this is a completely average 2D hack and slash and can be found very cheap. That brings us to the multi-disc game Strider 2, made by Capcom. And when you open up the case and put in the Strider 2 disc, of course, you are greeted with the arcade version of the original Strider, complete with all of its great sound effects and beautiful graphics. I absolutely love this, and this will be worth the price of the game just for this alone. However, they really did a funny job when they printed this game, making the arcade version on the Strider 2 disc, and the disc marked just Strider actually has Strider 2. Now, this can be as easy or as difficult as you want the game to be, so use that as your advantage or your detriment. So if you make it too easy, you'll end up breezing through this whole game in like a half hour, and then you might want to shelve it to not look at it again for quite some time. And you're really doing yourself a disservice when you do this. If you look at me playing this, yes, I am playing it on easy, but that's because I wanted to quickly show off some of these levels, and taking down bosses on easy happens really fast. Now, Strider is super acrobatic, and he can walk up walls and do a crazy dash kick, and he also has an over-the-top charge attack, which can be very useful for taking down massive enemies. Now, some people might say, hey, this is a 2.5D game, and yeah, I'm gonna say at times it really has that a lot. However, your sprite itself is very much 2D, and even though sometimes he scales up and down as you play through the levels, it's very much a 2D game at heart. And Strider 2 is one of the best ones of its style ever made. So I think it's worth every penny. Now I know that everyone knows all about Rayman, but did you know that it was an Atari Jaguar exclusive? But when the Jaguar started to die, well then they thought they might as well split off into two separate teams. And the PlayStation team was moving much faster and actually ended up releasing the game first, which is why there's lots of differences between the two different consoles. Now the PlayStation 1 got much better sound because it's on a CD, and the controls are a bit wonkier. Most notably, how to duck and move to one direction or the other is done with the left and right buttons up at the top of the controller. This seems rather weird. Why can't you just push down at an angle? It's kind of confusing that they did this, but I understand that they wanted to use all the buttons on this stinking PlayStation controller for what should be a really simple action platform game. It's also a lot more difficult because they made certain areas slippery. Yeah, like the music levels. It just feels like ice all over the place, and that's not in the traditional Jaguar game. So, yeah, there's that. Also, the bosses are all beautiful in this game, and I really cannot recommend this one enough, especially because it's like 1/10 the price of the Jaguar version. So, if you have a PlayStation, then this is definitely a must-have. The next game I want to talk about is Punky Skunk. First up, you're going to notice that it is very bright. It almost hurts my eyes to look at. And of course, being a 90s mascot, he has to have tons of tood. Now, you can't just jump on your enemies to kill them. No, instead, you have to spray them with your nasty skunk smell. However, you can pick up power-ups, and it wouldn't be a good action platformer without some of the over-the-top power-ups. And there's tons of them, whether they're roller skates, or snowboards, or parachutes, or a mole outfit, or jetpack, or just, you know what, there's tons in this game. There's also tons of mini-games, and even the bosses in this game end up being mini-games. So there's really a lot of content here, and the game's not too difficult either. Punky Skunk can be breezed through rather easily, at least for 90% of the game. The last 10% of the game is frustratingly difficult with really long levels. So the balance really isn't quite there. The other thing I really don't like about the game is how you make an annoying sound every single time you jump. But this did not stop me from completely 100% beating this game. It's actually one of the coolest hidden gems on the PlayStation 1, and it does this with a goofy animated skunk. But if you want action platform goodness, you have to turn to Skull Monkeys. This is a sequel to a point-and-click adventure game called The Neverhood, where the bad guy from that drops in and kills a freaking skull monkey in a gruesome way and suddenly becomes king of the Skull Monkeys. Now you have to run and kill tons more skull monkeys in order to liberate and free them from this evil villain. And things are gonna get weird. You might notice the clay animated art style looks completely beautiful. And you know what else looks awesome? The cutscenes. I played this game straight through to the end just to watch the cutscenes. They are laugh out loud, hilarious, and oh my god, it even makes references to Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark here in this one. I absolutely love it. Now, the platforming is terrific here, but you also have a couple of power-ups that are rather useful, like birds that can attack enemies, but they're really rare. And there's also this one power-up where you can make a shadow version of yourself and try and proceed through a level. So if there's an area that you keep dying a lot rather than wasting your lives, you could send Shadow you through and then practice opposite. If you do manage to make it through as Shadow You, well, eventually the real you will transport to Shadow You, and then you can continue working the way through the game. Or if Shadow You dies, well, then it's back to regular you. So using this in really tricky situations is an absolute must. The learning curve on this game is pretty good, but towards the end of the game, it does get excruciatingly difficult. The music and sound effects are beautiful. Sometimes it's just people beatboxing a cappella style, which I truly love. This game has so much personality, it is definitely one of my favorites. So let's take a quick look through these games to see how they are. Skeleton Warriors is really cheap and easy to track down. It's also a very competent average game, so if you have a slight inclination to think that you need to play this game, you might as well pick it up. Rayman is even cheaper, however, it's super freaking difficult, but if you could get past that, this is one of the best platform games ever made, and certainly one of the brightest. Speaking of bright, Punky Skunk is a true hidden gem on the system, and very much simply a 2D game. It might seem a little kid-like at first, but in the end, it's very much for adults. Strider 2 is so worth it, as you have the arcade version and the new Strider game that you could customize to the exact level of difficulty that you want. I recommend the first time through, at least try and beat it on average before you up or decrease the difficulty to your level. And Skull Monkeys is a hilarious, laugh out loud, fun to play game that is gorgeous on every level, and truly a hidden gem. And all these games, I think, are definitely worth owning. But of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I had a great time making it because I simply love 2D games and 2.5D games. So if you want to see more of the games that I love, well, just keep on watching this channel. You know, that's all I really want. I don't want any fame or anything like that. I just want you guys to have a good time watching this channel and occasionally talk to me a little bit because I am very lonely. So please send me a message. I cannot wait to hear from you. Also, I can't wait to hear what games you want me to play in the future. So please drop me a line. And until later, I will see you again, guys.